A quiet evening drive is interrupted by a suffocating heat. Heat so intense it softens your car's vinyl dashboard and begins to blister your skin. On December 29, 1980, Betty Cash, her friend Vicki Landrum, and Vicki's 7-year-old grandson Colby were returning from dinner. They were driving along a desolate, densely wooded stretch of farm-to-market road in Dayton, Texas. They were riding in Betty's 1980 Oldsmobile Cutlass. That standard steel and glass frame was about to become the only barrier between the three passengers and a massive anomaly. Just above the tree line, they noticed a brilliant light. Initially, they brushed it off as a commercial airplane approaching the Houston airport, but the light grew rapidly in size and brightness, moving directly toward their position. Then the sky seemed to split open. A dark, diamond-shaped object, roughly the size of a municipal water tower, descended to treetop level. It hovered directly over the asphalt, blasting a deafening, blue, jet-like flame from its squared-off base. The sheer scale of the object and the extreme heat radiating through the glass trapped the passengers inside. They were no longer driving. They were enduring an environment that was physically breaking down their car and their bodies. Fearing the Oldsmobile's exterior would catch fire, Betty stepped outside into the blinding glare. The heat was so punishing she had to retreat almost immediately. To get back inside, she had to wrap her hand in her heavy leather jacket just to pull the scorching hot metal door handle. As the passengers huddled inside the stifling cabin, the deafening roar of the object was joined by the rhythmic thud of heavy military helicopters. 23 twin-rotor Chinooks established a tight tactical perimeter around the anomaly. Betty read United States Air Force on their sides as they escorted it away. As the blockade drifted westward over the trees, the road ahead finally cleared. Betty hit the gas, and the terrified family fled the heat zone, watching the lights recede into the night sky. The arrival of 23 military helicopters dictated exactly how the witnesses interpreted the night's events. They believed they hadn't encountered an extraterrestrial ship, but had instead suffered severe collateral damage from a highly classified domestic military operation. The physical toll of that close proximity surfaced almost immediately. Within hours of arriving home, all three victims began vomiting. They developed severe, sunburn-like blisters across their bodies and suffered intense, crippling weakness. Betty, who had stepped completely outside of the vehicle into direct exposure, absorbed the brunt of the damage. Over the following days, her hair fell out in clumps, and she began shedding large patches of skin on her face. This resulted in a grueling, weeks-long hospitalization. This diagram illustrates the intense proximity between the 90-foot craft and the Cutlass. Evaluating her injuries, Betty's physician diagnosed acute radiation sickness. Observing her condition mirrored standing 3 to 5 miles from a nuclear detonation's epicenter. The physical trauma extended to the environment itself. Investigators returning to the site located a massive, heat-scorched circle burned directly into the road. Days later, witnesses reported seeing unmarked trucks roll in, dig up the burned asphalt, and quietly lay down fresh pavement. The victim's narrative was also backed by independent testimony. An off-duty Dayton police officer confirmed driving nearby that same evening, seeing a massive swarm of military helicopters sweeping the area with searchlights. The hospital records, the scorched asphalt, and the corroborating testimony from local law enforcement created a trail of evidence that could not be dismissed. Something physical, dangerous, and highly visible had occupied that stretch of road. Seeking medical compensation and direct answers, Betty and Vicki filed a joint $20 million civil lawsuit against the United States federal government. They moved forward under the conviction that they had been poisoned by a leaking experimental nuclear-powered craft. The severity of their medical records caught the attention of high-level politicians, including Texas Senator Lloyd Bentsen. He personally advised the women to file official damage claims, which triggered extensive, recorded interrogations of the victims by Air Force personnel at Bergstrom Air Force Base. In response to the litigation, the military issued an absolute denial. The U.S. Armed Forces testified that they did not possess any diamond-shaped aircraft and insisted that absolutely no military helicopters were operating in that airspace on the night of December 29th. The legal battle ended abruptly in August 1986. A U.S. district court judge dismissed their case completely. The reasoning was strict. Because the victims could not definitively prove the unidentified craft belonged to the U.S. government, the government could not be held legally liable. In the decades since, some skeptics have argued the victims' symptoms were merely the result of pre-existing autoimmune conditions. Yet the official military investigators who interrogated Betty and Vicky concluded that they were highly credible witnesses who were not attempting to exaggerate the truth. The government successfully avoided legal and financial liability, but Betty Cash and Vicky Landrum suffered from debilitating physical ailments for the remainder of their lives. Whatever hovered over the piney woods that winter night caused catastrophic damage to 3 innocent people, and over 40 years later, its true origins remain unknown.